Hi everybody, my name is Krystal DeSantis and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in Austin, Texas. I am very excited to be here with all of you um, and having this conversation today about healthy relationships. Um, so today I'm going to be talking about healthy relationships. And, one of the things that got me really interested in becoming a marriage and family therapist was this question of how do you know when you're in a healthy relationship, right? So I grew up, like I think a lot of us did, kind of learning about relationships by seeing the relationships around us. And, for myself, it was one of those things where as I started to look at relationships around me, I wondered, gosh, isn't there maybe an easier way to do this rather than just kind of seeing what works and then finding out what doesn't work just by trial and error? Isn't there a blueprint somewhere, right? How do you know if you're in a healthy relationship? Because again, I think like I mentioned in my little blurb for today's talk, is that if you ask 100 people, you might get 100 different answers, right? And so for myself, when I was looking at, getting into romantic relationships, I really wanted to know, is there a blueprint somewhere? Did somebody write a book about what a healthy relationship actually is, based on science, based on research? So that's really what led me into the field of marriage and family therapy. Is I was so fascinated. I wanted to know, is there a way that we can quantifiably look at the data and say this is what leads to a healthy relationship, and then these are maybe some of the red flags, right? So I wanted to know the green lights and the red flags. And as I went through my graduate school and then as I started becoming a private practice clinician, I worked with a lot of different kinds of couples and I worked with a lot of different kinds of issues. I worked with people that were in high conflict. I worked with people that had, maybe betrayals in their marriages or in their relationships, working with premarital couples, really just trying to understand, again, that essential question of how do we know when we're in a healthy relationship? What are some things that we should look for? So, so with that, I created this very simple model of working with, anybody, either an individual or a couple, and kind of having this framework for these are the six key things that I look for as a marriage and family therapist in any relationship that helps me to kind of get a sense of, is this a relationship that's tending towards health, or is this a relationship that's missing a few of these essentials? And maybe that's where we need to work, right? So I'm going to share them with you today. And of course, as we go through this, if any of you have any questions, please jump in and ask me. I really want to make sure that my model of strong relationships feels very applicable for you in your lives and in your relationships. And, like I said, I started looking into this based on my own desire to have healthy romantic relationships. But in my practice and as I've worked throughout, my life, it's actually become something that I've used with lots of different configurations of relationships. Friend relationships, coworker relationships, parent-child relationships. So, if you have any questions about how this could apply to your life, please send me a comment in the chat because I would love to hear it and I'd love to make sure that this model feels resonant to your life and to your relationships so that you can learn how to have healthy relationships in your own life no matter what type of relationship you are in, right? And we're all in relationships in one way or another, right? We don't live in islands, right? We are not encapsulated in our experience as people. We are all connected. And so as I go through this, I'd really be curious if you have any questions of ways that you can implement this in your life and in any of your relationships, okay? So what is this model, right? So my model is called the STRONG model of relationships, and STRONG is an acronym. So the acronym is what when I have an intake session with any new couple, or any new relationship that comes and sits on my couch, I show them this model, in which I'm going to show you, so that you can have a template for our work together, right? Because that was the other thing of, becoming a marriage and family therapist, was some people, some people really didn't believe in couples therapy. I think there was a stigma that therapy is kind of the last stop before you get divorced, or it's only a place where you go when you're in absolute crisis. And I really wanted to challenge that, and to have a very simple map, a very simple blueprint of, no, look, therapy also follows a formula. It's not always just, it's not just woo-woo magic. It is based on science. It's based on research. And there are ways that we can take this data and present it to you so that you can feel empowered as you work through, your therapy, or through any relationship crisis or any issue that comes up for you, that you can also feel like, I know what this is. I understand what's happening, and that you can then make empowered choices for yourself. So, okay. So the first S in the strong model, so the S in the strong model, is safety. And sometimes when I bring up the phrase, safety is the foundation of a strong relationship, I sometimes get a very quick response from people that say, oh, of course I feel safe in my relationship. I mean, that's a given, right? If you don't feel safe in your relationship, that's an obvious red flag. But here's the thing, is that for a lot of us, the idea of safety in a relationship is not as obvious as simply, there's no substance use issues, or there's no domestic violence, which, these are obvious red flags. But sometimes the subtle issues of safety in a relationship are really based on kind of your own experiences of attachment injury in the past. So from your childhood, or maybe previous relationships. And what happens is that if that trauma is not addressed, and it's not healed, or it's not dealt with, it's not understood in a way that feels healing, you can enter into a new relationship, and then certain things can happen, right? So maybe a fight will happen, or a disagreement will happen, and people will start to feel unsafe in this new relationship, even though it doesn't have these big kind of obvious breaches of safety. Does that make sense? So I'm going to break it down a little bit. So the 4 levels of safety that I go through with any new couple in saying, safety is the foundation of any relationship, is because we are ultimately, at the end of the day, we are all animals, right? And so what that means is that our bodies and our brains are very highly attuned to any perception of danger. And that often happens underneath our conscious awareness. So let's start with the environment, right? So when an environment is chaotic, often a couple can notice that in their relationship, their conflict will escalate, right? And so, maybe let's use COVID as an example. When the pandemic happened, when the environment of the world felt very unsafe, what I noticed is that a lot of people started feeling much more stressed, and that affected the way they were showing up in their relationships. Right? So that's something I want to start with naming, is that the environment of the world, or the environment of your home, is going to affect the safety of your relationship. It's going to affect how you feel in your body every day, right? And so first thing in the strong model, in thinking about what makes a healthy relationship, is stabilizing the environment. Does the environment feel chaotic, or does it feel safe and stable, right? And then following from that is body safety, which is, again, a really interesting one, right? Because, as we go through our lives, as we go through the world, sometimes body safety can feel like a given, right? Like, yeah, I'm not actively in danger right now. I don't know what you mean. Well, body safety is something that is kind of like that mindfulness piece, right? Of getting in touch with your breathing, getting in touch with your body, getting in touch with, what does it feel like when I'm activated? What does it feel like for me when I'm triggered, or something, starts happening, maybe in a conflict, and I start feeling myself shutting down, or maybe I notice my partner pulling away, and I start, my voice starts to raise up. I'm starting to notice that I'm outside of my window of tolerance, right? And that is something that really happens in the body. So in thinking about a healthy relationship, is first, do I know how to regulate my own body, right? Am I in touch with my body, or do I go through my days as kind of a floating head in the world? And a lot of us do, right? Our world is very structured for kind of living shoulders up, right? And so in a healthy relationship, being able to settle into your body, being able to notice when you're getting activated, and then being able to regulate yourself, and then also co-regulate with your partner, right? So again, this is where the piece of the strong model can be used in any relationships. I think we all naturally know what this looks like when we talk about a mom soothing a baby, or a dad soothing a small child or a baby, is we use our bodies to regulate the baby's upset body, right? If the baby's crying, a baby's maybe got colic, a parent will naturally use their body to shush, right, and co-regulate. Say, it's okay, it's going to be okay, right? If the mom or the dad is also dysregulated and they get very upset when the baby cries, sometimes it can just be that whole cycle of nobody feels safe right now, right? Both bodies are very activated, and they can't quite get to that place where it does feel safe to hold each other and to just have a moment of connection, just physical safety, right, in your bodies. So those are the first two levels, the environment and then your body, right? And then the third level of safety is emotional safety. And this is one that, in working with relationships, I see very often that it leads to high conflict, is when, people, in our society, everybody is socialized differently to deal with their own emotions, right? And, people that have grown up in families where maybe it was okay to talk about their emotions, and maybe they were encouraged to talk about their emotions, they're going to deal with their emotions very differently than somebody who grew up in a family where it was not okay to talk about their emotions. Or maybe there was an idea in some families where there was, there's good emotions and there's bad emotions, or there's strong emotions and there's weak emotions, or there's, safe emotions and unsafe emotions. And, sometimes in a relationship, either these two styles can clash with each other, right? The safe person's encouraging the other person to talk about their emotions, and then the other person doesn't feel safe talking about their emotions, so it becomes this, this cycle of talk to me, no, right? Or it could be two people that don't really feel safe talking about their emotions. And so then in the relationship, there can be a feeling of emotional disconnect, right? Because if you can't connect to your own emotions, if it doesn't feel safe just connecting inward, it's going to be really difficult to then share that safely with your partner, right? So that's a third level of safety, is really getting in touch with what is it, do I have any blocks to connecting with my own emotions? Are there any emotions that I feel, not quite safe to share with my partner, right? Or maybe I just don't even feel safe naming that I have this emotion. And, in a healthy relationship, there is just a sense of emotional safety in which, of course, the expression of emotion is incredibly important, right? You want to make sure that no matter what emotion you're experiencing, you're expressing it in a safe way. But that's also, that's very different than saying there are safe emotions or unsafe emotions, right? There's unsafe expression of emotion and safe expression of emotion, but in a healthy, strong relationship, all emotions are welcome, right? So that's the emotional safety piece. And then the final piece of safety, right, which is still the S, we're still kind of, following this map here, is relational safety. So, in a healthy relationship, the relational safety looks like both people know what their value is in the relationship, right? Because here's another thing that I see sometimes that I, with couples or with friends is, sometimes people can wonder, why does this person like me? Right? Do they only like me because I have a car? That might be something that friends, or when you're young, right? Or maybe they only like me because I'm the one kid in school that has a pool. Or as you grow up, as you become an adult and start getting into romantic relationships, there could be some question about that, right? Does my partner only like me because they think I'm really attractive, but they don't really like my personality? Or what is the foundation of our relationship here? Are we based on kind of a transaction, a function based? Or is there really something here in the relationship that makes us feel safe, that, my partner loves me for who I am and I love them for who they are? And it's really based on intrinsic value, is what I call it. So relational safety and kind of the contract of the relationship, which is another thing, in the modern world, like I said, there really is no template for what a relationship should look like, right? And so often when people come into a relationship, they're just bringing kind of the script of what they know, right? Maybe they are bringing in what they, saw in their parents, or maybe they actively say, no, I don't want to be like my parents. I'm going to choose, something else. But what I see often is that there's not a conversation about, what are we expecting of each other in this relationship, and do we have a relational code for the both of us that makes us feel safe, that here's our rules, here's our agreements, and here's our boundaries, and here's our commitment to each other, and this is what it looks like. And I call that relational safety, right? Because again, when I see sometimes relationships that are in conflict, or they have a lot of miscommunications, or even sometimes betrayals, it's something about, ultimately, the relationship hasn't been kind of written down into a sense of, we understand where we are and where the outside is. And that might sound a little kind of woo-woo, but every relationship needs a container, right? In that this is our commitment to each other, and then outside of that, well, that's what we consider maybe a betrayal, or that's what we consider a breach, right? A breach of our commitment. But what I often see is that couples, they don't have that conversation, or just relationships, they don't have that conversation about what makes us feel safe in this relationship together. And so then what ends up happening is one person says, well, I think this is fine, but the other person hasn't agreed to that, or they're not on the same page about what that means. Right? So relational safety in the strong relationship, in a healthy relationship, is saying we both are in agreement about what this relationship is and what our roles are in this relationship. Right? And again, there are transactional relationships and function-based relationships that are incredibly important, right? But in a romantic relationship, or in a parent-child relationship, are the two people in it differently than just based on transaction or function, right? And that's always a question that only the people in the relationship can answer, right? So that's safety. So in the strong model, the next piece is trust. And of course, that's something, when you ask people what makes a healthy relationship, trust is often something that people say right away, right? So trust, what does that look like in a strong relationship? Well, the one thing that I always kind of highlight in working with any couples is, trust is different than belief, right? Trust is earned. Trust is earned over time, and trust is based on kind of consistently showing up and being reliable for the other person. And also, trust makes room for repair, right? Because trust says, hey, if I mess up, I want to know and I want to fix it. Right? And that's how you build trust. It's a two-way street. It's both people over time building something together. Whereas what I see often is people, they instead say, I'm just going to believe my partner, or I'm just going to believe this person. And that's fine, right? I mean, belief is a great thing. I mean, there's, I believe in you and I trust you. is, these are wonderful things to hear and they're nice things to say, but let's be really clear that there is a distinction between these two things, right? I trust you based on what you've earned in this relationship, based on your commitment, based on your consistency, based on your reliability, based on data. Again, like, I want to go back to data, right? Whereas belief is simply something that's a gift, right? I'm going to choose to believe in you. And the thing that, again, I really want to highlight in a healthy relationship is that there is room for both. But especially when there's something that's high stakes, is there a clear division between, wait, are you just choosing to believe in me here and I don't really owe you anything if I don't follow through? Or are you trusting me here, and that means I have to know that this is a high stakes interaction here. Does that make sense? So that's the trust piece of a strong relationship. A healthy relationship, it has room for belief, right? You can always choose to believe in someone and just always choose to look for the best in them. But trust is also based on consistency over time and reliably showing up for each other in the context of the relationship, right? Okay, then the next piece, which is R. R stands for respect. And so, in my practice, in the work that I do with couples, I often see that a lot of, again, conflict or difficulty in knowing, is this a healthy relationship? Is this an unhealthy relationship? Do we have a chance, or should we kind of go our separate ways? It really is around these first three factors. So safety, right? If safety is not there in a relationship, it's really difficult for people to even just get settled with each other and start to learn to trust each other, which is the second piece, right? A lot of conflict and a lot of unhealthy relationships are lacking in trust, right? But if you don't know how to build trust and you instead just keep choosing to believe someone, you're, maybe kind of consistently getting that injury, right? You're getting some relational trauma or some attachment injury. So really distinguishing between those two things is a really important component of, addressing the trust piece in the relationship. And then this last, R of the first STR is respect, right? And so when I hear couples that come in, or any kind of relationship, this shows up a lot in parent-child relationships, is, I don't feel respected. And, that can be really devastating for a relationship, right? Why would you want to be in a relationship where you don't feel like the other person respects you? So that's a really important thing to look at, right? And if you're kind of trying to gauge, is this a healthy relationship? Is this an unhealthy relationship? Is respect. And the way I ask, clients, or the way I frame it with any, couple, is respect shows up by acknowledging boundaries. And also acknowledging that there is a difference between, one person's boundaries and the other person's boundaries, right? No two people are going to be exactly alike. And so in respecting boundaries, is your partner open to respecting your boundaries, even if they are different than theirs, right? And so that's where I really emphasize, that's where boundaries show up so much in a healthy relationship, is that even if you're a couple, even if you're intimately connected, right? Even if this is your best friend in the whole wide world, or even if this is your child and you're their parent, in any healthy relationship, respect of autonomy, of boundaries, of, personal agency is so important, because that says, I see you as a distinct person and I want to be in relationship with that person. Right? As opposed to, no, a relationship means this giant mass of, we're entangled, and, maybe there are some unhealthy relationships that can veer towards what looks like codependence or enmeshment, right? And that's not healthy either. So respect has what I like to call interdependence, where I'm my own person, you're your own person, but we are choosing to be together in this relationship, but I have to respect your boundaries and you have to respect mine. And that way we can foster respect for each other as individual people in this relationship, right? We're not this couple blob that can't make decisions on their own, or that are, too dependent on each other. But also we're not just islands in the world making decisions based on what's best for yourself. I mean, that's what, maybe if you're single you can do that, but in a healthy relationship it's interdependence, where you're your own person, I'm my own person, but we respect each other, we respect each other's input, and we also respect each other's boundaries, right? So in the strong model, so STR, the first three, the STR portion of the model is really about survival, right? So if a couple is struggling, or if a relationship is really on the rocks, I would suggest, so if you, as you're watching this, as you're thinking about your relationships, evaluate if there's a relationship that you're really struggling with. I want you to sit and think about these three components. So the safety. Do I feel safe with this person? Do I know what the context of our relationship is? Or am I kind of wondering, like, where do I stand with them, right? Am I safe emotionally with them? And then also the T, right? Do I trust them? Do they trust me? Do I feel like maybe I've been injured because I've been choosing to believe them, but I really they haven't earned my trust at all, right? And then respect. If I set a boundary, can I trust that they would respect that boundary? Or is this a person that's going to push that boundary, right? And also, do I care enough about them to respect their boundaries? Right? Do I honor who they are as a person, or do I feel like, gosh, I really don't want them to have any boundaries. I just want them to be there for me when I need them, right? And so if you're having any kind of high conflict, or if you're struggling with a relationship that you're not sure if it's healthy or unhealthy, I would suggest looking at these three pieces, the safety, the trust, and respect, and see if those might need some shoring up, right? And that's a piece where, again, as I'm talking about this, the reason I created this model was so that you could then go to a therapist or do some research around a specific thing that needs to be shored up in your relationship based on this, right? And so again, that's kind of what I like to say is the surviving piece, right? The STR is just about surviving. If a relationship doesn't have safety, trust, and respect, the survival rate is not super high, right? Because again, if you think about healthy relationships, these are essential components. And again, this is based on attachment research, it's based on trauma research, it's based on a lot of relational research, as well as practice with couples and with lots of different kinds of relationships. Okay, so moving on to the back half of the strong model, the O and the N and the G. O and G. So that's kind of where I shift into the thriving component of the relational therapy or the relational model. So when a couple or a relationship comes in, right, there are some that are coming in the survival phase. They just need some help kind of learning to survive. But there are lots of people that come in the, we're great. Like, we have safety, we have trust, we have a lot of respect for each other. We just want to take our relationship to the next level. We want to learn how to thrive. How do you do that, right? How do you take a relationship that's healthy and take it to this next level of, not only is it healthy, it's fulfilling, it's exciting, and it's passionate, and it enables both people to be their best selves. How do we do that, right? So the ONG is really part of that. So starting with O. O is for openness, right? And again, if you think about, gosh, well, is that important in a healthy relationship? Yeah, I think so. I mean, based on all the research that I've done, and based on, even just asking people, this is something that comes up a lot, right? Is openness in a relationship is so important, because otherwise, there's a sense of disconnect, right? But in order to be open, you have to, so again, this is where the STR has to be there first, right? Because openness, for example, openness without boundaries can be incredibly unhealthy, right? I think Brene Brown talks about this, right? That if you're just vulnerable and just open all over the place without any boundaries, you can actually be either harming yourself or potentially harming others, right? So openness in a strong relationship it incorporates the level of vulnerability in which I'm open with you, but I'm also open to you being open with me. Does that make sense? And so both people are feeling safe in the relationship and they can continue to open up to each other, but it feels very safe and it feels very boundaried. Because, here's the thing is that over the course of your life, over the course of any relationship, you're going to discover new things about yourself, and you're going to be a completely different person when maybe let's say when you're in your 20s or 30s and when you are in your 60s, right? And that's a great thing, right? We all need to be open to change because change is going to happen. So a strong relationship expects change, and part of that is it incorporates openness into the relationship. When I was a kid and when I was looking at relationships around me, one of the phrases that I heard that was really confusing to me was, they grew apart, right? If people got divorced, I would say, oh, what happened to that? Those parents, and of course, parents, telling children, they're not going to get into a lot of detail, but I remember that phrase and it really stuck with me because I didn't understand, right? What does that mean? You just grow apart. I thought when you got married, that was it, right? I thought you were committed to each other. But and again, as I started my research and as I started becoming a marriage and family therapist, what I did notice is that the couples that were not open with each other did grow apart because they became totally different people, right? And that's a good thing, right? You are going to grow as a person throughout your life. I mean, let's embrace that. But often what I saw is that couples that failed to keep each other updated about the new person that they were becoming, if openness wasn't built into their relationship, they would start to grow apart, right? And then, they would kind of look over at each other after 10 years and be like, oh, dang, I don't really recognize that person. I feel like I'm different, and I don't really recognize this person, right? So having openness as part of a strong relationship is so important, and it's really essential in the thriving component of the relationship, right? Because you need to be open with yourself to new experiences so that you can grow as a person, but also be in a relationship in which it's okay to grow, in which openness is built in, right? So after openness comes N, which is nurturing. So once you're open, once you're learning new things about yourself, nurturing in a strong relationship, in a healthy relationship, says, you and your partner can become the best versions of yourselves. It doesn't have to be tit for tat, right? I've, noticed this sometimes where people feel in unhealthy relationships that their partner is their competition, that their partner is the obstacle to them being their best self. And that's really sad, right? Because if that's the case, then if you want to grow and you want to nurture yourself, you have no choice but to leave the relationship, right? And, that's again where I, as a marriage and family therapist, I really was looking at all of this research and saying, you know what? Nurturing in a healthy relationship, it allows both people, or however many people are in this system, to really be the best version of themselves. And it actually doesn't take that much away from, if anything, it adds to the relationship, right? I think sometimes people, especially couples, they can get into this mindset that, if I nurture their dreams, then I'm going to lose out, right? Or if I'm supportive of what they want to do, like they want to go to the gym, then I lose out, right? Then I don't get to do what I want to do. But that's where I saw that, that's actually a marker of an unhealthy relationship where couples are getting into this tit for tat, right? Well, I'm not going to nurture you if I'm not getting nurtured, right? And so in a healthy relationship, in a strong relationship, both partners are not just open with each other, right? They're like, gosh, as I've started to learn more about myself, maybe I want to go to a community college and take a new class, or, I've really decided I want to work on my fitness. And having a partner that is nurturing and that says, you know what, I believe in you. Let's figure out a way that we can work this out. And actually, you know what, that challenges me to think about what might I want to do, right? And so the N and the O, the openness and nurturing, really just go hand in hand, and they challenge, right? And it's kind of that marker of a healthy relationship is two people that continuously challenge each other to be the best version of themselves, but also are nurturing and supporting each other in that journey, right? And so in the strong relationship, I call that the openness, and then the nurturing, right? So this is something else in when couples or any relationship, when you can move away from the tit for tat and instead moving towards what I call finding the middle. It's and I've kind of thought about this and talked about this to couples, is I really don't like the idea that marriage or relationships are about compromise. I think when I hear people say that, there's an element of, I guess that means we have to settle, or we have to, give up something, right? The idea of compromise can sometimes feel like I'm taking less because I know you need some, right? And so instead, I really don't like I don't like the word compromise. I instead want to look at nurturing in a healthy relationship, in a strong relationship, as collaboration. Is, let's expand. There's always room to find the middle here, right? And again, when you or your partner, when you're stuck in kind of a tit for tat, sometimes our brains, right, we get stuck in only looking at what we're going to lose. When instead you switch your mindset to nurturing, it really changes the focus to how can we work together? How can we collaborate rather than compromise? We're not going to lose anything. Instead, the sum of our parts are going to be more than what I could accomplish by myself, right? And in nature, there are actually so many examples of nurturing in which the two species, so like, for example, the monarch butterfly and the milkweed, right? So the milkweed is a plant by itself. It's a beautiful plant, but it thrives. It gets pollinated by the monarch butterfly, right? So it's a plant on its own, but it does better when it gets nurtured by the monarch butterfly. And then vice versa, right? The monarch butterfly is a beautiful butterfly in its own right. It's not a plant. It doesn't have any plant parts to it, but it does better. It nurtures. It thrives by having that connection with the milkweed, right? It gets all its nutrients, it gets, the nectar that it needs. And so this nurturing relationship in which they are in symbiosis, in which the togetherness that they've established is stronger than what either of them could do on their own. They actually end up, again, in that beautiful kind of nurturing relationship, right? So that's the part of nurturing in the strong relationship that I encourage anybody to look for. If you're wondering, is this a healthy relationship? Is this an unhealthy relationship? Ask yourself, do I feel nurtured by my partner? Do I feel like they care about me and my dreams? Or are they threatened by them, right? Do they instead, kind of take all the resources that we have for themselves, or do they really care about making sure that I feel like I'm my best self in this relationship, right? And do we as a couple, or as a unit, as a relationship, do we have a nurturing perspective in which we can say, you know what, I care about your best you, and then you care about my best me, so that together we can be our best we, right? That the sum of our parts are stronger than just either of us could be on our own, right? So then coming to the final piece of the strong relationship. So, kind of, again, this is formula of what I look for in healthy relationships. It's kind of the blueprint for the therapy that I do with couples, is looking for generosity. Because, when I was, once again, kind of looking at all the elements of what makes a healthy relationship and what makes an unhealthy relationship and how can you distinguish the two, is, you can have all of the ingredients, but unless you choose to put it into action, it doesn't really matter, right? Like you can know all the steps. You can know what makes your partner feel safe. You can know what it takes to earn their trust. You can know what their boundaries are. You can know, what they've discovered about themselves today, and you can know what they need from you. But unless you have that generosity to say, you know what, I choose to be in this relationship. I choose to be all those things with you. I choose to create a relationship with you that's strong and healthy. It doesn't really matter, right? Because relationships, being in a relationship, again, yeah, we can't get away from it in our world, but being in a healthy relationship is always a choice, right? And often it's a very generous choice that you make, because there is so much about relationships that is work, right? And that was something else, is that, when I was kind of doing my research on relationships and asking people about, what do you know, and looking at the science, is, there's kind of a prevailing narrative that relationships are work, right? Which, okay, yeah, that's true, but why are they work? What's so hard about them? Well, it is because it takes a constant choice, right? It's a constant every day, every time you get to a choice point, to say, you know what, I'm going to choose to care about my partner's needs. And that's where I call it generosity, right? Because nobody is forcing you into a relationship, right? I mean, in a healthy relationship, both people have agency. And that really goes back to, are you in this relationship in a generous way? Are you choosing to see the best in your partner? Are you choosing to approach with kindness? Are you choosing to have that kind of goodwill buffer, right? It's kind of the fairy dust of a healthy relationship, right? But, here's the other thing, is that when I was looking at the science and the research, is, often, if you just Google, right, like healthy relationships, what do I do? A lot of emphasis is on the generosity, right? Just be kind to your partner, be nicer to them, do nice things for them, take out the trash every once in a while, do something nice for your partner. Love languages also falls into this category, right? Because you are learning something about who your partner is and what they need, right? And being generous and giving them love in the way that they like it, not necessarily in the way you like it, right? So there's a lot of emphasis on being generous and being kind in relationships. But what I've noticed is, and this is the reason why I put it at the end as G, is because a relationship cannot survive on generosity alone. Right? Generosity is like the dessert. Generosity is the fairy dust. It's the, the sprinkle at the end. But unless you have the safety, trust, respect, openness, nurturing, generosity by itself is not a full meal. It's not enough. But a relationship that doesn't include generosity can also feel unsatisfying, right? Because there is a real, and this is where kind of the magic of a relationship is really, quantified, or it's unquantifiable. But if we could quantify it, it would feel like generosity. It would feel like unselfishness. It would feel like, choosing to see the good in your partner, which is, again, a very generous thing. It would be choosing at any choice point to be generous to your relationship and be generous to your partner's needs, right? And also generous to yourself, right? So in the generosity piece, there's also a lot of self-compassion, a lot of loving kindness to self, right? And being generous and saying, I'm still continuing to grow, and I'm going to be generous about my needs as well. Right? So it's not about self-denial. It's not about putting all of your partner's needs ahead of your own. It's not about self-sacrifice or self-subjugation. It's about saying, I have abundance, and I'm choosing to be generous and share it in this relationship that I'm choosing to be in a healthy relationship, which is going to take work. And that's where the generosity comes in, is saying, I'm going to choose to do this and be generous with myself and my love and my time and my energy and with my humor and with everything that, my goodwill, all of the things that, a relationship can't exist on by itself, but they sure take that relationship to a next level. Okay? So once again, that's the strong model. So the first three are about surviving. Right? So if you and your partner, or if you and your child, or if you and a friend are maybe struggling in a relationship, just evaluate. Do you have the first three components, right? Are you Are you able to survive? Do you have safety? Do you have trust? Do you have respect? And if you do, wonderful. Maybe then you need some thriving, right? Maybe your relationship has gotten a little stuck or a little stagnant, or you're like, we have this, we're really solid, but it doesn't feel exciting, right? And so that's where the ONG comes in. So if you are looking at your relationships and you say, you know what, we're very stable, but maybe we're stable to the point of it kind of feels stagnant and boring. Well, then you need some ONG in your life. You need some thriving. You need some openness, right? And openness, again, is about the new energy of what do I know? How am I challenging myself to grow? And how am I allowing myself to share that in my relationship with my partner? Nurturing, am I nurturing myself? Am I nurturing them? Do I know how I like to be nurtured? Can I share that with my partner? And then the generosity of the magic fairy dust of what it means to be loving, what it means to approach your partner with goodwill, and what it means to say, I see the best in you and I choose to be in this relationship, and I choose to share my life with you, and I choose to create a healthy and strong relationship with you. So that's it. That is the strong model of relationships. And, today I kind of breezed through it, just kind of as a little primer. But I have a podcast on my website if you're interested. I also have a little handout, there we go, that I show couples, when I work with them in session. I show families, and it's downloadable on my website. So if you'd like to go check it out, my website is austinstrongbc.com, because I'm based in Austin. And you can also send me an email through there. And please message me on here through this community. And thank you so much for having me here. And I will look forward to answering your questions if there are any today, or if there are some at any other time. All right, thank you so much. And I wish you all the best in a healthy, strong relationship.